Wen Jin quickly resolved Hyu's situation. While she wouldn't claim credit with Mu Qianfan, she was very pleased because she knew Mu Qianfan would be happy, and it also proved her confidence. Of course, Mu Qianfan was happy. The incident was nipped in the bud as soon as it happened, not affecting his woman's mood, which was more important than anything else. He didn't want her to suffer any harm. While they were happy, He Qingwan was furious, throwing a tantrum at the hotel. After months of painstaking training, various packaging and promotions, and even occasional staged performances, she ultimately couldn't even make it into the top 3, yet he won the championship. Facing reporters yesterday, she was almost driven to death by their sharp and harsh questions. If Li Junyi hadn't arrived in time, she wouldn't have been able to escape. Now, besides Hiyu, she hated those reporters the most. They asked all sorts of questions, whether appropriate or not only questioning her plastic surgery, but also spreading rumors about her and Li Junyi. She hadn't had plastic surgery, and her relationship with Li Junyi wasn't a rumor. She was now his legitimate fiancé, having gotten engaged at Hiyu's engagement party last time. However, no matter how she explained, they wouldn't believe her. If Li Junyi hadn't taken her away and comforted her so well, she guaranteed she would have been angry all night. Last night, after learning that Hiyu didn't appear after the award ceremony, she contacted Li Shui, hoping to take the opportunity to smear Hiyu. Li Shui did succeed, but unfortunately, the effect was not significant. In the morning, seeing so many internet trolls relentlessly slandering Hiyu for acting like a big shot and even implicating her sugar daddy, she laughed so happily then, wishing he would die. But her joy didn't last long. Those news articles disappeared so cleanly and thoroughly, as if they had never existed. Hiyu, in a blink, became the champion praised to the skies. How much human, material, and financial resources did it take to handle things so neatly in such a short time? He Qingwan became increasingly suspicious of Mu Qianfan's identity. At this moment, He Qingwan was lazily lying in Li Junyi's arms, her face flushed from exertion. Second young master, have you investigated Mu Qianfan's background? Li Junyi's hand was still resting on He Qingwan's chest. I've been investigating, but either he's too well hidden, or he truly has no background. I haven't found anything. He Qingwan unhappily moved Li Junyi's hand away. If he really had no background, could he have easily acquired beauty? I heard your group had been eyeing beauty for a long time. Li Junyi put his hand back under He Qingwan. He does have some capability. Not only did he acquire beauty, but he also protected it very well. The day before yesterday, he moved beauty to Xingyue. Mu Qianfan's long-awaited relocation of beauty had been successfully completed the day before yesterday under Lin Xujie's arrangement. After returning from Xingyue, he could commute to work with Hiyu. The office building where Xingyue Media was located had almost all been bought by Mu Qianfan, with only a few holdouts remaining. Once all were bought, the building would be renamed. He Qingwan became even more displeased. With such great abilities, you still think he has no background? Li Junyi thought for a moment and said, my elder brother says the same thing. Not long ago, he extended his reach to Jinghai, and even my brother's intervention couldn't stop him, so my brother is also investigating him. He Qingwan frowned upon hearing this, becoming more curious about Mu Qianfan and hating Hiyu even more. If he really was someone with a powerful background, then she wouldn't be able to deal with her at all. Li Junyi comforted her. Don't worry yet. My brother is more capable than me. He can definitely find what I can't. Give him some more time, and I'll tell you as soon as there are results. It can only be this way for now. He Qingwan's expression softened slightly, then she smiled and kissed Li Junyi's face. Thank you, dear. You're the best to me. Li Junyi flipped over and pinned He Qingwan beneath him, smiling lewdly. Since you know I'm good to you, why not show it? One kiss isn't enough. He Qingwan coyly demurred. Oh, dear. I don't want it anymore, didn't we just MMPH? Mu Qianfan took Hiyu around the imperial capital to eat, drink, and have fun. When Jean dutifully became their driver again, all while having to witness their affection, enduring wave after wave of their PDA. Taking the opportunity of a lunch break, when Jean called Lin Xujie to complain, I should have known then that I should have followed young master to Jinghai instead of letting you go. Lin Xujie slouched in his office chair like he had no bones, laughing heartlessly. What's wrong? Suddenly regretting something from so long ago, are you trying to see young Master Mu? When Jean sighed. No, I'm not familiar with young Master Mu. I just don't want to follow young master to Qingyue City. Lin Xujie raised an eyebrow. Why? You should know that even if you don't go, you'd still have to handle young mistress's affairs. But you were really fast this time. Good progress. One Jean looked utterly disheartened. Do you know what it feels like for a single person to watch others show affection? Lin Xujie nodded repeatedly. How could I not know? It's torture for singles, isn't it? It's just too cruel. Wait, don't tell me you're being tormented by young master and young mistress? If Lin Shujia wasn't right in front of her, Wen Jin would have guaranteed him another look of pity for the intellectually challenged. Otherwise? Do you think I have time to watch others show affection? Alright, I'll mourn for you for 1 second then. Ha ha ha. Lin Shujia suddenly burst into laughter. Xiao Jin, I never thought you'd be tormented too. Ha ha. Wen Jin. She shouldn't have called Lin Shujia. She had hoped for some comfort, but instead, she became a joke. Hearing his triumphant laughter, she was so angry she wanted to hit him. Ha ha ha. Lin Shujia couldn't stop laughing because he had never imagined that when Jean, this usually stern and ascetic woman, would actually be tormented. Then you keep laughing. I have things to do. I'm hanging up first. When Jean didn't know if she was angry or disappointed. In any case, she hastily hung up after saying that. Lin Shujia didn't care, only feeling that under Mu Qianfan's influence, when Jean would soon come to her senses and perhaps one day become a gentle woman. At this moment, he was also on the phone. It was Li Qiao calling to invite her to lunch, and Li Qiao was persistent with her. Hi's attitude was as indifferent as usual. Sorry, I'm already having lunch. And Li Qiao persisted. What about tonight then? You should be free, right? Hiyu gently glanced at Mu Qianfan, who was quietly eating opposite her. There's a charity gala tonight. And Li Qiao suddenly laughed. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Then I won't disturb your meal. Eat slowly, be careful not to choke. Hiyu. Does he think she's a child? How could she choke? This in Li Qiao's way of speaking and being a person was strange. Mu Qianfan saw Hiyu put away her phone and asked sourly. What? Someone's invited you to dinner again. Hiyu shrugged. Yeah, missin. I don't know what she sees in me. She's so persistent. Learning it was that woman again, Mu Qianfan relaxed. Your charm is so great it appeals to both men and women. Looks like I'll have to keep a closer eye on you from now on. Hiyu asked amused. How would you keep an eye on me? Do you want to tie me to your side with a rope? Mu Qianfan actually nodded in agreement. That's not a bad idea. Tied to my side. No one can snatch you away. But there was one thing he didn't say. Even without tying her to his side, no one could snatch away his beloved wife unless he died and was no longer able to protect her. So, to ensure his darling wife wouldn't fall into another's arms, he had to cure his old illness. Only then could they be a devoted couple for a lifetime, protecting her completely throughout. Hiyu rarely pouted. With such good conditions, why are you so lacking in confidence? I haven't even started worrying about you being snatched away, yet you're worried about me. Mu Qianfan seized the opportunity to ask, then, would you worry? Hiyu's words almost blurted out, but she managed to catch herself in time. I never worried before, and now there's even less to worry about. Mu Qianfan touched his face and sighed. So, I'm that uncharming. And here I thought I was quite attractive. How could Hiyu tell him that she hadn't worried before because she hadn't held any expectations for him, and now she didn't worry because she trusted him? He had given her enough security. She deliberately pretended to be nonchalant and said insincerely, what's there to worry about? At worst, we go back to how things were, or even better now, at least I can earn more money. This was actually her thought when she first got married. Mu Qianfan was so excellent, but if he wasn't the right man for her, they would simply part ways and return to their starting points. She would still be herself. That's why she was initially unwilling to give herself to Mu Qianfan. Otherwise, if they really divorced, losing her virginity would be a raw deal, and she still cared greatly about her purity. It was precisely because she cared that Li Junyi hadn't succeeded in possessing her body and still lusted after her. So, women should still have some self-respect and self-love. Mu Qianfan's expression suddenly turned serious. Unless I die, I won't let that day come for you. Hiyu's heart stirred, a warm current quietly flowing through her, but her face suddenly darkened. Don't ever say that word again. I don't like it and I don't want to hear it. Alright, I won't say it again. Mu Qianfan smiled, his smile warm and content, because he understood Hiyu's meaning. She didn't want him to die. How could he not be happy? Evening, hotel. Mu Qianfan didn't plan to attend the charity gala, but he was worried about Hiyu. Firstly, Hiyu was inexperienced, and secondly, because Yang Yi would be attending, he asked Wen Jin to accompany her. Before she left, he coldly reminded Wen Jin, be careful, don't let anyone offend her. She doesn't like to argue with people, but that shouldn't be a reason for others to bully her. Wen Jin respectfully replied, young master, please rest assured, I will stay by young madam's side every step of the way, not letting anyone take advantage. This included He Qingwan and Yang Yi. Yang Yi was the young master's rival in love. How could she not keep a close eye on him? And He Qingwan was young madam's enemy. She needed to be watched even more carefully. If she wanted to court death, she shouldn't drag Wen Jin down with her. Mu Qianfan was very reassured by Wen Jin. She and the other person were the only truly capable ones he had. Having followed him for so many years, He was very clear about her abilities and couldn't help but admire his grandfather's foresight. If his grandfather hadn't brought them back and meticulously trained them, how could he be so relaxed now? Both of them not only possessed considerable ability, but also dedicated themselves wholeheartedly to his family. After giving instructions to Wen-jin, Mu Qianfan returned to the room. Seeing Hiyu dressed in full splendor, he had an impulse to hide her away, fearing others would covet her and try to snatch his wife. Although no one could snatch her from him, trouble was bound to arise, and he greatly disliked trouble. Even more so, he didn't want Hiyu to get into trouble. But alas, a golden talent always shines, and he couldn't hide her. Hiyu wasn't a weak woman who hid behind a man, seeking his protection. Even if she was once a pearl obscured by dust, sooner or later, she would emit her own dazzling light. Mu Qianfan reached out and gently caressed Hiyu's face, saying tenderly, "My wife is truly beautiful." Hiyu looked at herself in the mirror. This evening gown was prepared for her by Wen-jin. It was not only a perfect fit but also perfectly suited her temperament, almost as if it were custom-made. However, she didn't know that this evening gown was indeed custom-made, but not by Wen-jin. The person who truly made it was Mu Qianfan. Wen-jin had merely acted according to his instructions. Hiyu said modestly, "It's the gown that's beautiful." Mu Qianfan pursed his lips. "Then do you like it?" Hiyu smiled, satisfied and content. "I love it." Mu Qianfan tucked a stray strand of hair behind Hiyu's ear. "It's for you." Hiyu paused. Mu Qianfan added, "This is the gift I prepared for you, to celebrate your championship win." Hiyu was astonished. "You prepared this for me?" "Yes, prepared for 2 months." Mu Qianfan looked at Hiyu with satisfaction. "Although it's been quite busy these past few months, and the design was a bit rushed, the effect isn't bad." Hiyu was stunned. She had originally thought Wen-jin had bought her the evening gown, but not only was it prepared by Mu Qianfan, it was also designed by him personally. He actually knew fashion design. He spent 2 months designing it, which meant that when she decided to compete, he had already deemed her a champion, and at that time, she still considered him a stranger. This man always surprised her, easily stirring her heart. It took her a long while to find her voice again. "How did you know I would definitely win the championship?" Mu Qianfan leaned down and kissed Hiyu's forehead. "Because I trust my own eyes, and I trust my wife." Hiyu looked down at the evening gown on her. "I didn't realize you were a designer too?" Mu Qianfan smiled. "Can't call myself a designer, I just have a little interest. I picked up a few things while I was studying." Does he have to put it so lightly? Just picking up a few things allowed him to design such a perfect evening gown. If he hadn't just picked it up, wouldn't he already be a famous designer? Wen-jin knocked on the door from outside. "Madam, it's almost time we should leave." Mu Qianfan gently patted Hiyu's face again. "Go on, I'll wait for you to come back." Hiyu looked up and directly kissed Mu Qianfan's lips. Although it was just a fleeting touch, it was enough to satisfy him. The more proactive she was, the more pleased he became. The happiness he desired was, in fact, that simple. When Hiyu and Wen-jin arrived at the hotel where the banquet was being held, Yang Yi and Yi Luo were waiting outside for them. It was Yang Yi's first time seeing Hiyu in an evening gown, and he was as stunned as he had been yesterday on the competition stage, unable to tear his eyes away. Wen-jin promptly spoke up, reminding him, "Cough cough. Director Yang, it's getting late. Shouldn't we go in?" Yang Yi suddenly came back to his senses, then made a gentlemanly gesture of invitation towards Hiyu. "Ladies first, please." Yi Luo was very displeased. She and Yang Yi had arrived much earlier, but had been waiting outside for Hiyu and Wen-jin, though no one had asked her to. Yang Yi waited for Hiyu because he hadn't seen her since the awards ceremony yesterday, only knowing she was with Wen-jin and that there seemed to be someone else with them. He hadn't heard the male voice in yesterday's call very clearly, but he could at least confirm it wasn't him, so he really wanted to ask Hiyu in person. Who was that? Where had she gone that day? Was she with that person? What were they to each other? Was it true, as the news claimed, that he was her sugar daddy? Yang Yi entered the banquet hall with Hiyu, his mind full of questions, but he had no chance to ask. Wen-jin stuck by Hiyu's side the entire time, and he also needed to be circumspect. Wen-jin had parachuted into Jiren, becoming a chief assistant even more important than general manager, Zhao Dongliang. Yang Yi now had to treat her with 3 parts deference and dared not provoke her easily. However, Yi Luo, whose mood was very sour from waiting so long outside, couldn't care less. She said tartly, "You disappeared right after the competition. Did you ever think about how we felt?" Regarding reporters not seeing Hiyu yesterday, Yang Yi had mentioned it in a call, and today she had also asked Mu Qianfan, but Mu Qianfan said it was fine, better not to meet them anyway. Hiyu indeed didn't want to face reporters. The thought of being asked questions she didn't want to answer, or even outrageous questions, filled her with repulsion, and she certainly didn't want to be gawked at. So she didn't feel she had made a big mistake. She said flatly, If you didn't want to see reporters, you could have chosen to leave. I didn't ask you to stay. Yi Luo was furious. You still think you're right? Do you have any idea how much manpower, resources, and finances the company invested in you to get you to where you are today? Yet you completely disregard the company. One Jean interjected at the right moment. Regarding the company's expenses, I believe I'm in a better position to speak than you. I was the one who took her away yesterday, and that was Director Mu's instruction. Do you have a problem with that? Choked by Wen Jin's words, Yi Luo felt her chest tighten with frustration, unable to vent her anger, making her heart pound. Assistant Wen, don't rely on being Assistant Mu and constantly use Director Mu to pressure me. Wen Jin was equally unceremonious, saying coldly, I don't feel the need to use anyone to pressure you. I'm just speaking the truth. Whether you choose to listen or not is your concern. Yi Luo, unable to argue with Wen Jin, turned her aggression back to Hiyu. You knew there was a banquet, yet you came so late. Were you deliberately making us wait? Just a little success, and you're already putting on airs. Hiyu was hardly a soft persimmon to be easily manipulated. She immediately retorted, First, I wasn't late. Second, I didn't ask you to wait for me. Third, I don't need to put on airs. Wen Jin's expression grew a few shades colder. You knew she came with me in my car, yet you say that. Are you deliberately saying that for my benefit? Do you think I'm putting on airs in front of you? Yi Luo's temper flared. She tilted her head and said, While that wasn't my original intention, since you put it that way, I'll admit it. Haven't you always been putting on airs? Haha, Wen Jin smiled coldly and haughtily. Why are you so ill-tempered? Is it because we offended you? Or because your daughter is coming back and someone's backing you up now? Yi Luo froze. How did Wen Jin know Yi Yunxi was coming back? She herself had only received the news half an hour ago, and Yi Yunxi had specifically said not to alert the media. Wen Jin knew from Yi Luo's expression that she had guessed correctly. A cold smile played on her lips. Then let's see how strong your backing truly is. Our time will come. After saying that, she led Hiyu away. She didn't want to deal with this, and she guessed Hiyu felt the same. Yi Luo had previously worked in media and only came to Jaren after it was acquired. Yang Yi wasn't familiar with her to begin with, so he didn't stay either and left with Hiyu. After the banquet began, there were speeches from the organizers of the model competition, representatives of major sponsors, and other officials. As the champion, Hiyu also had to go on stage to give a speech of thanks. As for the specific content, when Jean had already briefed her in the car, she only had to repeat it, with no need to think for herself. Mu Qianfan had arranged everything. Hiyu wasn't used to or fond of being stared at, but the moment she stood on stage, she suddenly felt calm, as if she was born to be the center of attention. They say that the higher you stand, the farther you see. The moment Hiyu stepped onto the stage, she saw He Qingwan in the crowd, dressed in a layered evening gown. She was dressed like a princess, but only her attire resembled one. Her temperament truly didn't match that of a noble princess. She also seemed afraid others wouldn't know her relationship with Li Junyi, clinging tightly to his arm. In every way, it looked like she was declaring her ownership. He Qingwan was also watching Hiyu. She had been looking for Hiyu since arriving, but Hiyu had come too late. The banquet started almost immediately upon her arrival, and she couldn't move freely yet. Hiyu stood on stage like a luminous figure with her own halo, and many men in the audience gazed at her with astonished admiration, including Li Junyi, whose arm He Qingwan was holding. He, who outwardly seemed to care little for relationships, would, paradoxically, become hopelessly entangled once he truly loved, allowing himself to sink deeper and deeper, unable to escape. After all, he had known Hiyu for 10 years, and Li Junyi had some understanding of her. It was just that she had too few ties, and without leverage, it was difficult for him to make a move. He Qingwan was a perceptive person. Though she couldn't fully understand the thoughts of those around her, she could sense the abnormality in this moment. She glanced sideways at Li Junyi and saw his eyes fixed intently on the stage. The undisguised admiration in his gaze ignited a furious jealousy within her. Her engagement party had been ruined, and she had already married another man, so why could she still capture Li Junyi's attention? Was Hiyu born to ruin her? When she looked at Hiyu again, He Qingwan's eyes were filled with venom and malice. It was no longer jealousy, but hatred. She hated that Hiyu was so much better than her, in every way. Hiyu possessed both height and figure, and her beauty was so exceptional. What about herself? Her height was a sore spot. She had to wear sky-high heels whenever she went out, and she wasn't as beautiful as Hiyu. She had finally managed to snatch Li Junyi, but now he was once again setting his sights on Hiyu. Why? Everything Hiyu had was natural, while she had to fight for everything. This was heaven's injustice, too unfair to her, so she had to take action. She couldn't sit back and wait for her downfall. Chapter 84. Those who flaunt their love die fast. Meanwhile, on the second floor, and Li Qiao, accompanied by 3 men and a woman, looked down. See? This is the He I was telling you about. Isn't she different from all those flamboyant hussies? The eldest brother, and Jinza, watched downstairs, his face devoid of expression. Who knows if it's real or just an act? You can't just judge people by their surface appearances. The second brother, and Yao Yang, nodded. She does look quite good, as expected of little sister's discerning eye. The third brother, and Yishuan, shot in Yao Yang a look. You're the second eldest, but you don't have to play up the second, silly. Part so responsibly, do you? How is she good? Be careful you don't kiss up and trip over your own feet. Su Wenjing sighed silently to herself, feeling a pang of sympathy for the second young master for a second. And Li Qiao glared at Anishwan. No one will take you for mute if you don't speak. If you dare bully second brother again, believe it or not, I'll sew your mouth shut. No taste, no class, humph. And Ishwan retorted righteously. Didn't you ask me yourself? You should have told me not to answer. Then I wouldn't have to look at whether it's a person or a pig standing on stage, and I wouldn't have come here at all. To actually call Hugh a pig, and Li Qiao was so furious she punched an Ishwan on the spot. How dare you insult my future sister-in-law? Do you have a death wish or something? Tell me, I'll grant it in a heartbeat. And Yao Yang, that blunt boy, chimed in at just the right moment. I don't think it's either. He probably wants to infuriate you, so he'll be the youngest in the family and get all the pampering. And Li Qiao took him seriously, landing another punch on an Ishwan. So you've been coveting my position all along? You bastard. The pause was because she couldn't quite decide how best to curse an Ishwan, but that very hesitation drained all the force from her insult. An Ishwan raised a hand and gave Li Qiao a knuckle rap on the head. I'm a bastard? Then what are you? A king nine egg? And Yao Yang quickly interjected, by that ranking, it seems so. Little sister is below you. But then what about big brother and me? What kind of eggs does that make us? Our family doesn't have that many children. And Jinza held in Yao Yang's shoulder, trying not to collapse. Second brother, my dear second brother, can you please not be so serious? Being so, too, silly, will make it impossible to find a wife. And Yao Yang very seriously replied, it's fine. If I can't marry a wife, then I'll get married off. I'll give her a 10-li-long bridal procession. Surely there'll be a woman willing to marry me, right? If not, a man will do too. Su Wenjing silently grumbled to herself. Asterisk young masters, even if you really don't like the lady on stage, you don't have to divert the topic like this, do you? Don't you think you're sacrificing too much? Asterisk. While the 4 siblings laughed and bickered upstairs, Hiyu on the banquet hall stage had already naturally concluded her insincere, purely manipulative speech, which was met with enthusiastic applause. With a graceful smile, she stepped down from the stage amidst the applause, returning to Wenjin's side. Among the many people in the banquet hall, only Wenjin struck her as agreeable. And of course, she didn't dislike Yang Yi, who had consistently helped her. Her initial impression of Yi Luo wasn't good, and after tonight's spectacle, she felt even less favorably towards her. Yi Luo, for her part, was discerning enough not to follow them and make herself an eyesore. Once the various speeches on stage had concluded and everyone was free to mingle, He Qingwan, arm in arm with Li Junyi, walked towards Hiyu, only to be intercepted by Wenjin. She wouldn't give He Qingwan any opportunity to bully the young madam. This was not only a promise she'd made to the young master but also her duty as a subordinate of the Mu family. No one was to bully her master. Yang Yi had long held a grudge against He Qingwan. The last time he was humiliated at Jiren's press conference, He Qingwan was undoubtedly involved, so he, too, intentionally helped block her path. He Qingwan grew agitated. What is the meaning of this? She's my cousin, after all. She used to eat and live at her house. Now that she's famous, I can't even say a word to her. She deliberately raised her voice, ensuring those nearby could hear, subtly painting Hiyu as an ungrateful white-eyed wolf, instantly drawing numerous gazes. When Jean said expressionlessly, Miss He, you'd best mind your words. We don't have the time or energy to perform for you here, though it truly is a waste for acting skills like yours not to be on stage. He Qingwan's acting skills truly were consummate. Her eyes immediately reddened, and she promptly put on a tearful, about-to-cry expression. He looked at her and didn't even want to utter a single punctuation mark in response. She turned to leave, but He Qingwan's soft voice drifted from behind her. Xiuyu, do you hate me? Hate me for not letting you have Jinny back then? I'm sorry, but Hiyu turned back to see He Qingwan so distraught and sad she looked on the verge of fainting, collapsing weakly backward into Li Junyi's timely embrace. When Jean was absolutely right. It was truly a shame He Qingwan's acting wasn't on stage. Even the Oscar statuettes would weep with envy. He Qingwan's words and actions drew many eyes, and under those gazes, she bit her lip and choked out, but I truly love Junyi. I'm sorry, I can't. Hasn't anyone ever told you that flaunting your affection will lead to an early death? He Qingwan was in the midst of her dramatic performance, but unfortunately, before she could finish her line, she was interrupted by a crisp female voice. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw Li Qiao swaggering over, flanked by three men and a woman. She recognized the woman as Li Qiao's assistant. She was called an assistant, but she seemed more like a friend. He had gathered this from Li Qiao and Su Wenjing's interactions backstage, which had, in turn, made her feel even more favorably towards Li Qiao. And Li Qiao, a high and mighty heiress, could still be so approachable with her assistant, a stark contrast to someone like He Qingwan, who treated her assistant like a mere servant. He had never met the other three men, but Wen Jin knew who they were. After Mu Qianfan learned that Li Qiao was showing goodwill towards Hiyu, he had ordered Wen Jin to investigate their background. Upon seeing them, she quietly informed Hiyu, "These are the three young masters of the Yin family." Hiyu nodded. She had, in fact, already guessed. Although she had never seen the three of them, she had learned from their profiles that Li Qiao had three older brothers who doted on her profoundly and were deeply protective. Upon seeing Li Qiao, He Qingwan's expression immediately shifted, looking as though she'd just swallowed a fly. So much so that she couldn't even keep up her act, staring fixedly at Li Qiao. And Li Qiao walked up to Hiyu. The woman who had been as proud as a peacock just moments before suddenly smiled like a lunatic, making Hiyu want to rub her forehead in exasperation. "Hiyu, we meet again." And Li Qiao reached out and patted Hiyu's shoulder. "It's a shame there are always flies around. Why do you attract so many of them?" And Yixuan, asking for a punch, chimed in. "That just means she smells too bad. After all, flies are always attracted to shit." He Qingwan immediately looked at an Yixuan with delight. She didn't know him but instantly felt her favorability towards him skyrocket, believing he was helping her, and even secretly threw him a flirtatious glance. And Yixuan involuntarily shivered. Compared to He Qinghua, who was nothing but common, he found Hiyu, that utility pole, much more pleasing to the eye. His little sister's taste was spot on. He Qinghua noticed the disgust in an Yixuan's eyes, but mistook it for being directed at Hiyu. She then stared at him unabashedly, scrutinizing him thoroughly and quietly evaluating him in her mind. Dressed head to toe in designer brands, he was clearly wealthy and influential. Though his looks held a touch of femininity, his beauty was so stunning that it appealed to both men and women, making her heart flutter uncontrollably. Then she glanced at Li Junyi behind her. He was handsome, yes, but only handsome, incomparable to the gentleman who had just spoken up for her. The more she looked, the more she liked him. And Li Qiao raised her fist and swung it at Anishwan. "You're the stinky one. Your whole family is stinky." And Jinza frowned. Scold him, don't drag me into it." And Yao Yang kindly reminded Li Qiao. "Xiao Qiao, Xiao Xian's whole family also includes us. It's not good to scold ourselves." Hiyu stifled a laugh. This was the kind of sibling interaction she envied, unlike He Jianhao and He Qinghua, who spent all day spewing baseless insults. Of course, and Li Qiao was also arguing with her brother now, but this kind of argument was clearly very loving, imbued with an undeniable deep affection in every word and action. He Qinghua, however, didn't think so. Hearing in Yaoyang say the whole family also includes us, her first reaction was that this handsome man was Li Qiao's husband. And Li Qiao punched in Yixuan again. "It's all your fault. You've made me so mad my IQ dropped all over the floor." And Yixuan easily dodged the punch, then gave Li Qiao a look of disdain. "Do you even have an IQ? How can something you never had drop all over the floor?" He Qinghua let out a giggle. Although she had just lost face, the unpleasantness in her heart instantly vanished at the sight of Li Qiao being retorted by this handsome man. "What are you laughing at? Is this any of your business?" And Li Qiao glared at He Qinghua, then familiarly took Hiyu's hand. "Come on, let's go over there and talk about life." He was desperate to shake off He Qinghua's clingy and disgusting presence. She didn't even spare her a glance and walked off with Li Qiao, but being held by the hand like that made her really uncomfortable. Wen Jin naturally continued to follow Hiyu. Yang Yi, seeing three big men still following Li Qiao, hesitated for a moment and then also left, leaving He Qinghua to perform a solo act. He Qinghua wanted to follow too, but Li Junyi was unwilling. He had clearly seen the way she looked at Anishwan. This woman obviously had designs on that effeminate man. He Qinghua couldn't pull Li Junyi along and turned back to look at him, perplexed. "Darling, what's wrong?" Li Junyi's expression was a little grim. "What do you mean, what's wrong? They're doing their own thing. What are you following them for?" He Qinghua quietly defended herself. "I'm worried about Xiaoyu. That woman isn't a good person." Li Junyi impatiently cut He Qinghua off. "Are you really worried about her? Or are you trying to use this opportunity to get closer to that man? You know in your heart." He Qinghua's heart skipped a beat. Had Li Junyi noticed her flirting and scrutinizing that man? How could she be so careless? Seeing Li Junyi angry, she quickly pleaded sweetly. Second young master, I didn't digest. Li Junyi didn't want to hear her explanations. I'm warning you, don't eat from the bowl and look at the pot. If I catch you again, I'll kill you. He Qingwo was frightened because Li Junyi's eyes were very fierce when he said that, nothing like his usual self, so he wasn't just talking. But wasn't he also still thinking about Hugh himself? Why could he but she couldn't? This was too unfair, and besides, she hadn't done anything out of line. However, thinking about it differently, did his concern about her looking at other men mean he loved her too much? This was clearly jealousy over that man. While He Qingwo was still daydreaming, He Yu and the others had already disappeared from their sight, found a spot to sit down, and began what Li Qiao called talking about life. And Li Qiao sat right next to He Yu, enthusiastically introducing her. He Yu, these are my three brothers. They all look presentable, but they don't have wives. As soon as these words were out, the three and family young masters' faces darkened. What did she mean, presentable? Didn't this girl have a single nice thing to say? Speaking so freely in front of outsiders, it made their family's upbringing and traditions seem terrible, didn't it? He Yu also silently complained in her heart. Is it really okay to speak of your brothers like this in front of an outsider? You're setting them up. And Li Qiao, however, paid no mind to any of this, pointing at Njinza and introducing him. This is my eldest brother, Njinza. He's a bit of a chauvinist, always likes to lecture me when there's nothing wrong, wants to control everything I do. He Yu politely nodded at Njinza. This man looked very steady, somewhat like Mu Qianfan at certain times, and his eyes were clear but also astute when he looked at her. And Li Qiao then pointed to Nyao Yang. This is my second brother, Nyao Yang. He's kind-hearted, gentle, and considerate. He'll definitely spoil his wife after marriage, but some people say he's the landlord's Sarzi. And Nyao Yang gave He Yu a slight smile, polite yet distant. Hello, it's nice to meet you. He Yu returned the smile, but it was even more distant than Nyao Yang's, purely out of politeness. Finally, and Li Qiao pointed her hand at Anishwan. That bastard is our third, Anishwan. He's more beautiful than a woman, has a terrible temper, and I actually don't want to introduce him to you at all. And Ishwan scoffed. I wonder who dragged me here kicking and screaming. Now she says she doesn't want to. I'd think I was a masochist, running to a place like this to suffer for no reason. And Li Qiao's eyes widened. Come or don't come, who cares? I hope you never find true love and die alone. When the three first appeared, Wen Jin only thought they were attending the dinner. But now that Li Qiao had said so much, she already understood. This was simply the family's matchmaking event. And Li Qiao, clinging to He, was to introduce her to her brothers, then lure her back to be their sister-in-law. Oh no, Yang Yi hadn't even been dealt with yet, and now the young master had three more love rivals. Wen Jin quickly pulled out her phone, reported the situation here to Mu Qianfan in time, and then received a call from Mu Qianfan, which remained connected, keeping him on the line to listen. How could the intelligent He Yu not see in Li Qiao's intentions? When Li Qiao said she wanted to introduce someone to her backstage, He Yu had thought it was a friend, but it turned out to be a trap. However, although Li Qiao meant that, she didn't say it explicitly, so He Yu couldn't directly refuse, as that would make her seem too self-important. So she simply played dumb.